Hey, everybody. It's Mike, Commissioner of the WATL. Welcome to the live stream today. It's been a while. We're going to take a few minutes here. There's been some big changes at Waddle over the past year, and it's not going to stop. We've had some new talent join the team, and one of them just so happens to be with us right now, Tyler Flynn. Tyler's one of the very first things Tyler did coming in was actually create a ranking system. Tyler's been talking about this for a while, and we've been talking to him about it for a while, and I've been fairly resistant to it. There's some ranking systems out there that we're not super big fans of, that don't really work for the community. But Tyler had some big ideas, and over the past few weeks, he's refined those, and that's what we're bringing forward to you today. So it was released last week. You've all hopefully had a chance to go through it. Tyler's going to take the opportunity here to run through just a preview and a review of what it is, what it entails, what it means, and give everybody a chance to ask some questions and have a discussion about it. So without further ado, Tyler, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Mike, and thanks everyone for tuning in and putting up with all these changes and crazy ideas that we have over the last month. And like Mike said, they aren't going to stop. So buckle up, I guess. Before we get into answering too many questions, hopefully you guys did have a chance to look at that presentation that we did and look at the ranking system and how it works. But I did want to just do a very brief overview of what we were thinking, how it works, things like that. And I'll try not to get sidetracked by questions while I do that, although I will be tempted to answer some in the course of that overview. But very basically, what we wanted to do was create some sort of number that took multiple metrics into account. That, you saw earlier this month, we published that we are changing seeding to an average model versus that Bulls hit model. And I think that is the best that we have right now. But is there a better metric we can use that takes sort of multiple facets of the thrower into account? Those bullseye percentages, the amount of hit kills they're hitting, as well as their total average. And that's where we came up with that sort of base rank, that base number, where your base number for each season is based on your average, your bulls hit, and your kills hit. There's different multipliers for each one, but that'll give you sort of a base number with a maximum. If you threw all perfects for all 28 games, I think you'd get like an 1126 rating, which is absurd. So in line with a lot of other sports, we sort of wanted 1,000 to be achievable, but hard. So the first person to get 1,000 rated, maybe we'll make a patch or something. Or Mike likes pins. Maybe we'll do a pin for the first person to hit that sort of 1,000 rated season. That base rank will change every season and will be an average of all the seasons in the year. I said I was going to answer any questions during this, but someone asked, will missing a season hurt you? No. So if you don't participate next season, say, that just won't be included in your average for that year. So your base rank would be an average of the 3 seasons that you did complete, but you would not get a 0 for the incomplete season. It would just not be averaged in. Going into the next year, that base rank would also be averaged with your previous year's total rank. So whatever you end 2023 with, right, that will be averaged with the 4 seasons from 2024. So there's actually 5 numbers that would maintain your base rank, the 4 seasons, and then your previous ranking. In addition to that base rank, which we said was made up of those 3 key metrics, bull percentage, number of kills hit, and total average, how well or poorly you do at tournaments would also affect this rating. To keep it as simple as possible, how we are determining your how well you did in a tournament is just going to compare your ranking going into the tournament among those who were there, and then how well did you place at that tournament. So Lucas coming into the tournament as a 1 seed, if he wins the tournament, he gets like 2 points. He does not improve his rating because he did not exceed his rank having won that tournament. He was expected to win, and then he did win. He doesn't really improve that much ranking wise. However, if you are, say, the 30th ranked person at a tournament, the 30 seed, and you win the tournament, your ranking would go up significantly by, I think, like 40-ish points. You would improve your rating if you were the 30 seed and came in and won the whole tournament. In theory, if you're ranked 30, there are 29 people better than you at the tournament, and you outscored or outplaced all 29 of those people. So your ranking would go up accordingly. On the flip side, if Lucas, as the 1 seed or the 1 rank at the tournament, were to come outside of the top 5, he would lose ranking, right? Because you let X amount of people below him surpass him. Again, that doesn't change significantly. If he came in like 5th or 6th, he'd lose like 2 points. But if he came in 18th, he could stand to lose 20, 25 points. In my mind, it's important to be able to lose points at a tournament, because then we eliminate that sort of pay to play model where just going to tournaments does not improve your ranking, right? If you have a chance to lose points at a tournament as well as gain them, and if those near the top can't gain that many points anyway, then just going to 20 tournaments is not going to make you the best ranked thrower in the world. Now, no one's going to tournaments every weekend at this point, but if we got to a point where even as the 1 seed, if Lucas goes to 40 tournaments and gets 3 points at each of them, should he be going up 120 points? Probably not. But that's all part of this beta test of looking at, well, how many tournaments should count and which ones should count, things like that. Okay, so brief overview there. Hopefully it didn't take too long, but we'll get into some of the questions that we got on our Jot forum. And if you, as viewers, have any questions that you want to ask as well, feel free to leave those in the comments, and we'll get to those as well. First question, very easy, I like that. Nick Hayes, where can we see a live version? If you go into the post, these all live in spreadsheets that I am maintaining for each of the 4 disciplines. On that PowerPoint, the second last slide, if you click on the hatchet, big axe, duels, knife, that'll link you right to those spreadsheets so you can see the live versions of the placements. All right, so then we had a few here. I'll read out the whole comments, right? This rating will go up or down. Depending on your current rank and how well you place at each tournament, why would ranking only go up or down based on tournaments, not including league? I think that's just a misunderstanding there. League actually makes up about 90% of your rating. And really, like I said, if you are placing in a tournament near your rank, your ranking is not changing. For instance, Cascadia, the vast majority of people at Cascadia gained or lost less than 1 point. So we had a lot of people who moved half a point, 1 point, etc., because they're placing near their projected finish, right? If you're the 14th ranked person and you tie for 12th, right, you're gaining 0.4 points, right? You're not significantly moving that needle at all. So I think that maybe there was an understanding that tournaments could very significantly change you, and that's not really the case unless you are placing far outside of your rank. For instance, someone throws a really, really good marathon, and ends up third on the leaderboard, right? So they go into the next tournament ranked the 3 seed, but they come in 50th, right? Well, that'll bring them down to the next tournament. They're not going to jump to 50, but the next tournament they'll probably be seeded 15 to 16, right? And if they can maintain that, then they'll stay at 15 or 16. If they come in 50 again, then they'll probably jump to the 35th seed, right? So the system kind of uses tournaments to self-correct. Each tournament will make the seeding more and more accurate till people are sort of ranked and seeded where they're sort of meant to make it sort of correct, if that makes sense. Tournament circuit should be completely separate from league because not every league can pay to go to tournament, let alone all of them. Anyone who disagrees with this is part of the top tier elite, who most of these changes lately have not been devised by, but also benefit the most. I agree that league and tournaments, in terms of qualifications for World, should have a separation, but this is sort of completely separate than that. As I said, you can't gain tons of rankings by going to lots of tournaments. It just doesn't work that way. In fact, as I said, you can stand to lose points at tournaments. In terms of benefiting the elite, I'm using Lucas as an example because he is ranked number 1 right now. He stands to lose a lot more by going to tournaments ranking wise than he does to gain. Because if he does not come in first, he does not gain very many points. Whoever has beaten him will increase their points over him, because if he is there, then that means whoever is the 2 seed is the 2 seed instead of the 1 seed. Cascadia, for instance, saw Philibom beat Lucas, right? So which put Philibom close to surpassing Lucas in those rankings. Even if someone lower had won that tournament, right, they would have jumped significantly higher than Lucas did. And we're going to kind of jump to someone else asked a question about the tiers mattering. And no, because this is just based on the throwers who are actually present at the tournament, the tiers will not matter. I think kind of helps answer this question as well, because you don't need to travel to the biggest tournaments in the world to gain ranking points from a tournament. You can gain them from not even a tier 3, any sanctioned tournament that happens near you, you could potentially gain or lose ranking points at. The system is based on the people who are present at that tournament, though. So if you are the best thrower in your area, much like the example of Lucas, going to 10 local tournaments in your area and winning all of them is not going to significantly increase your ranking, because you will be ranked number 1 at all those tournaments. And being ranked number 1 and winning will not, push you, will not move the needle considerably. But if you're, again, the 10th seed going into a larger tournament and can come in 5th or 6th, you would gain more points than coming in first, being the first seed at a local tournament. So that's sort of why the tiers don't matter as much, because it's all based on the caliber of throwers that are there and your rank within that caliber of throwers. I like this one. Why do we have all these complicated methods, circuit points, complicated seeding, and now this? League attorneys should be separate. Agreed. We already said I agreed on the league attorneys should be separate. The problem is, in our sport, we can't separate them right now. League is still the number 1 reason people get to Worlds. It's the number 1 factor in the bids that are given out. It's the number 1 way to earn circuit points. That's how you get to Worlds. Like, you get to Worlds through League. There was almost no one last year who earned points outside of league that would not have gotten in just via league circuit points anyway. And Mike and I were talking just before this. This system is ahead of its time. This is not necessary right now, and that's why probably it seems like it's too complicated. But if you look at any major sport, especially ones whose footsteps we are following in, darts, bowling, cornhole, etc., they all sort of have these player ranking systems. And we will want that at some day. I would like, when we need the system, to have already been using and testing one for several years. So we aren't making one up when we decide that we need it. I would rather have one in place that we have tested and modeled and looked at multiple different years in a row before we jump into, hey, we really kind of need some sort of player ranking system. Let's make one. Scenario, which maybe has happened in the past. Look at the first year of circuit point system, not to throw anyone under the bus, but wasn't great. Like, there was lots of flaws with that. And we learned, right? We learned what worked and what didn't. And I think that it's improved tremendously from there. I don't want that. I'd rather have this tested for a year or two before we come out with the final numbers and things like that. All right. How are new 2023 players ranked? Where do they start if they've never thrown before? This is a great question that we are actively seeking to answer this year. If you look at the actual rating systems, I've actually highlighted anyone who was at a tournament who did not have a ranking coming into the tournament. So far, what I've done is, let's say that player ties for ninth with three other players, right? I've made their base rank the average of everyone they tied with at that tournament. I think that's a pretty fair way to do it right now. We will need to track those people. If they do compete in a league after that, then that would sort of replace that base rank. Because we do want to use actual data when we have it versus an estimated data. But in general, I think just sort of taking the average of the people that they tied with, is going to put them in roughly the right spot going forward. And as we talked about, the system will sort of self-correct the more and more tournaments that person does, right? So let's say I give them a base rating and that puts them seeded 30th at the next tournament, but they come in 4th. Like, okay, well, then their ranking will automatically go up. And at the next tournament, they'll be sort of ranked or rated, seeded higher. And the more and more they do, the more and more accurate that ranking will become. Will the league leaderboard still be in effect? Oh, absolutely. Yeah. All this does is take stats from a longer period of time and assign them to throwers, right? So it's not just leaderboard stats. Like, you can still say, hey, I'm the number one thrower of Winter League or whatever, but is the number one thrower of Winter League the number one thrower in the world? Is the number 5 thrower of Winter League the number 5 thrower in the world? I don't necessarily think that those correlate, but that doesn't diminish the fact that you were number 5 for that season, and I don't think that should go away. I think having seasonal leaderboards and average is still, I don't anticipate that going anywhere, and I would not have plans to eliminate it at the very least. So this would be completely separate. David McIntyre. Oh, so that last question was by Rebecca Thorgensen. David McIntyre, I think in all honesty, the only metric that matters is players average. And then ask 3 more questions that were basically just that one repeated. I agree. So average is the most important stat, which is why for seeding this year, we are using average. However, it's not the only stat. So I 1,000% agree with you, David, D-Mac, that average is the most important stat, but I think that there's other ones that we want to include in a ranking. When we look at the seasonal leaderboard, like we said, we do want to sort by average. Seeding this year is done by average because I do think it's the most accurate metric we have. And the ranking system is, like I said, the vast majority of it is based on your league season, right? And your average within that season. But as we talked about, what average are we going to use if you're going to rank people at a tournament? Philibom's last season was 6 months ago. Is that an accurate reflection of who he is as a holistic thrower? You know, Mike Kump did 1 league in January of last year. Is that averaged? Should that average seed him for every tournament for the entire year? If you are the number 4 ranked player in a season, that means for the entire next season, any tournament you go to, your minimum seed is 4. Well, what if you come outside the top 40 at all of those tournaments? Should you really still be the 4th seed at like tournament number 5? I don't think so. I think I would like to see it be a little bit more dynamic. And I would really like to see tournaments come into play a little bit there. Because again, you could have a league thrower who throws a 52 average but comes out and comes 3rd in a huge tournament. I think their seed and their rank should be rewarded for that. On the flip side, if you are again 2, 3, 4, 5, but can't come in the top 20 in a tournament, are you really the second best thrower in the world? I would argue that you're not. Someone who throws in a bowling league on the same lane in the same venue with the same people at the same, pace, it's probably going to have a higher average than they do going to a tournament. And tournaments, at least in our sport, right? It's a little bit different in some other sports. You cannot use averages at tournaments because the goal of a tournament is not to get the best score. The goal of a tournament is to win your match. And so you might have people with strategic drops on throw 8 to keep it tied going into 9-10. You could have people take a practice shot at a kill when the game's out of reach. You could have a player with a higher hit percentage. Let's say I bowl out all my opponents. I don't need to go for kills. Well, my average may be a 60, but you, hypothetical, had to go up in all your matches, but missed 3 bullseyes and have a 61 average. Did you throw better than me? Or did my bowling out my opponents and hitting 100% of my bullseyes matter a little bit more in that tournament? So we can't use average if we're going to include tournaments. And I really think that tournaments should be included in a small way into a player's total ranking. Ashley, there should be a way for throwers to know their seeding in a tournament, know what they need to place to gain and not lose points. Isn't readily available to throwers at tournaments. That's the dream, Ashley. That would make my job so much easier. You have no idea how many people ask me at tournaments like, hey, where was I seated? And then I've got to look through the bracket and figure it out. There's not an easy way to do that with this ranking system right now, because your seed is different than your rank at the current moment, because we're not using rank to seed tournaments. We're still using average, as we are beta testing this. Those two things won't necessarily line up. But that is one thing that I would love to see in the future. It does get a little dicey when you get into multiple brackets. I think that even if the app did it, the app would probably only show your seed within that bracket. So you'd sort of have to know where that is overall. Although the math would work out pretty similarly. If you were like the 10 seed in your bracket and came third in your bracket, it'd be the same as being the 40th seed overall and coming in 12th. The math would work out fairly similarly. So you would at least get to know where you needed to come within your bracket, which I guess is the more important piece unless you're in the top 8. All right. And now it looks like we have some live stream questions as well. John Debke, how much does one's disc golf ability affect their rating? I would like to say a lot, but it doesn't, which is probably good because I'm bad at disc golf. However, I will say that a large part of this model was based on the disc golf model. If you look at the PDGA, their sort of player ranking system is very similar to this, where you play in a tournament and based on how well you did at that tournament versus the course, your rating would go up or down. And one thing as someone who plays in disc golf and who is not very good that I really, really like about that is that I'm not necessarily playing to win when I go to a disc golf tournament. I'm playing to beat my rating. And I think that is really cool. And I think that a lot of throwers might appreciate that about this system, is that if I'm the 60th seed at a tournament, I don't expect to win the tournament. But what I could do is I can still raise my rating. I can still, if I come above 60 though, I can bring up my rating. And it sort of gives people a goal that's not win the tournament or nothing, right? Or even if there's circuit points going to the top 8 or whatever. Yeah, I might not get circuit points, but maybe I've done enough to improve my ranking. So at the next tournament, I'm ranked 40 or 50 instead of 60, and then you just kind of give yourself those smaller milestones versus coming in the top 8 or finishing in the money. Revolution X, newer to the Waddles tourney scene, are there randomly seeded attorneys? And if so, how does this ranking system work for them? Oh, yeah, you are newer. There used to be a lot of randomly seeded tournaments. It's not great. So now all sanctioned Waddle tournaments are seeded. You could run a randomly seeded tournament if you wanted to, but it would not fall within like the tournament circuit or be rated. And I think in terms of this system, then it would be unsanctioned, meaning it would not affect your player rating going to a randomly seeded tournament. Jimmy Grindle, is this system sandbag proof? Maybe. Is the short answer. The whole reason we're beta testing this is to make sure that it can't be gamed. And actually, the earlier model of this had your base rank just be your most recent league score and not an average of all 4. And that was very sandbaggable because you could sandbag a league to get last seed, win a tournament or come in second to get a ton of tournament points. And then in your next league, throw your actual average and your tournament points. Let's say you gained 170 of them because you were the last seed who won a tournament, would stick with that new average, right? So if I throw a 200 ranked season, come be the last seed at a tournament, get 170 points. Then the next season, I could throw a 900 ranked season, and now my rank is 1070. By averaging them, we fix that a little bit, right? So if we average the 200 and the 900, though, then 500 plus 170 still puts me below the 900 I would have if I had just thrown a 900 in the first season. I think that will fix it. But again, we're going to monitor and see where everyone's at and who gained or lost points and if the system can be gamed. Does the ranking reset every year? Does previous year's ranking affect the current season or year? Ragnar. Yes. So early on, I don't know if you were on earlier. Your last year's ranking is averaged with your base rank. So your base rank is the average of all the season's ranks that you did that year and your previous year's total rank. So it's actually 5 numbers that sort of get averaged together to create your 2023 rank. So in the beta test, everyone has a 2022 rating. As soon as winter season is done, that will get averaged with your winter season rating to create your base rank. And then when spring's done, all 3 of those will be averaged together. And at the end of the year, right, that'll become a fixed number, right? And we'll sort of reset with that being your new base rank. At least that's how we imagine it working out, but we'll see. Does ranking have a place in Pro League or WATC US Open draws, or is it solely for tournament rankings? It does not affect sort of Pro League bids, anything like that at the moment, right? Right now, it affects absolutely nothing. It is just a beta test. If it goes well, I would see the ranking system being used to seed tournaments, but not being used to distribute bids or Pro League status, things like that. What it could do in terms of tournaments is create a better way to have divisions, which I think would be really cool. For instance, you could have a US Open that was 800 rated and above. You could have a tournament at the US Open that was 600 to 800 rated, and you could have a below 600 rated tournament. Right? You could create multiple divisions at some tournaments, which would be, I think, really cool and a really cool kind of direction for the sport. Eventually, we're going to have some sort of pro-am distinction, and I think that this could very easily get into that. Hey, buddy. Justin. I know you said that not competing a season will not affect your rating, but what if you participate but don't complete all 28 games? Oh, actually, I did mean to talk about that. Yes. So currently, right, if we're using average, you'd have to do by number of games played as 28. But in the rating system, the number of games that you play would not affect the ratings for that season, right? You could still calculate a rating based on 20 games played very easily. You would not need all 28 to create that rating. If you're someone who's going for kill shots, not playing those 8 games would potentially decrease your rating by a little bit because you would not get the 2 points per kill shot in there, but your bowl percentage and your average would likely be pretty similar across those first 20 games. I would say that most likely we would discount any league under 12 games, since that's the sort of benchmark we've put for a player counting towards their venues league. I would say I would not want to rate a season for someone less than 12 games. But I think if you are above 12 games, I'm fine with your ranking being calculated for that season based on those matches. This would you could potentially game the system if you did less than 12. Like let's say I had a phenomenal night, right, in week 1. Well, if I just don't play out the season, would I have a better ranking? Maybe. But I'd also say if you're having a phenomenal night and hitting kills and things like that, that you actually stand a better chance to improve your rating by playing the 28 games than you would to decrease it from there. Um, Especially if we expand that from 4 games to, say, 12 games. I think 12 games is enough of a data set that it wouldn't be a fluke if you had 3 great weeks in a row and didn't play the rest of the season. I don't really think you're gaming the system at that point. I think you're actually losing points by not playing the other 4 weeks than you would gain points by playing them. I think that was our last question. I do want to just mention real quick that all of the formulas are published. If you look at that blog post that we linked a while back and in that presentation, all the formulas are there. We put them in the video description here as well. So all the formulas, blog posts, everything like that is in the video description. So if you want to just test out some hypotheticals as well, like, hey, if I'm the 20 seed and I come in first, how many points would I get? Or if I'm the 3rd seed and I go 0-2, what's my ranking going to be? We can do that. The last thing I wanted to mention was breaking ties at tournaments. So we have people near the bottom that say if you go 0-2 at a tournament, you technically tie. If you go 0-2 at a 128-person tournament, you technically tie for 92nd. So if I'm ranked 128, you can't calculate my new rating based on tying for 92nd because it would show me having jumped 30 places, right? And I would improve my rating tremendously. So within the ties of each section, I was arranging them by their rank going in. So if you are the 12th ranked person and you tie for 9th, your rating will be calculated on coming in 12th. Assuming that everyone else who tied for 9th was above you in rating. Now, if you tie for 12th and a bunch of people below you also tie for 12th, then you'll be calculated as coming in 9th or 10th, etc. But basically, the closer, if you're ranked 12th and you tie for 9th, you essentially placed where you should have, and your rank should move as little as possible. And putting you in 12th moves your ranking as little as possible. Right? When you get to those big long ties where you have 30 people tying for 45th, that's when you could see big moves from the 70th ranked person tying for 42nd or 45th, and then jumping several points up the ranking charts. So we don't want to see that. So if you're within that band that you sort of should be in, your ranking will be calculated pretty close to where you were going. Is the ranking going to be something similar like S, A, B, C, similar to racing? That was Scott Aronson. That's not how we envisioned it, right? The ranking is a number, similar to like what a lot of professions use. Like I said, like 1,000 would be like phenomenal. Like you're the best thrower in the world if you're 1,000 rated. But what you could do, as I talked a little bit about, is you could sort of create bands within there. Let's say, like I said, like above 800 rating, maybe we would want to call that A tier or pro, and 7 to 800 like B tier, and then you could have tournaments specifically for those tiers, uh, which would be pretty cool. All right, I think I'm through all the things I wanted to talk about. All clear, no more questions. I think, like I said, we would still love feedback on the system if we want to take a look at the rankings and how different tournaments were affected, things like that. We're already looking at some things that might be issues. Like I said, if you just stack a ton of tournaments, maybe 10 tournaments count, and maybe the 10 that count are your 10 best and your 10 worst, or your 5 best and 5 worst. So that it's not like necessarily always gaining points by going to multiple tournaments. But yeah, hopefully you feel like your questions were answered. If you still have questions, Tyler.Flynn at worldaxelingleague.com. I'd be happy to answer them, or on any sort of discussion post. And try to answer questions on there as much as I can during the day as well. All right. Thanks for joining us, everybody, and bearing with me on this sort of complicated system. Have a wonderful day. I'll see some of you in Dallas this weekend, or maybe in Capital City in 2 weeks.